So Charlie Kirk posted this video in response to everything that's going on between Israel and Gaza, and it is filled with the most outrageous lies. So I just had to respond to it. I will be making a video down the road that will break down, everything that we've seen, this past week and what's going forward between Israel and the Palestinians. There's some really scary stuff that I've seen. I saw a report that was talking about there's potential ground invasion being drawn up by Israel, into Gaza, to attack Hamas targets. That would undoubtedly lead to many, many civilian deaths. So it'd be a total catastrophe. Like I said, I will make a video breaking all of that down. But let's just jump into this Charlie Kirk video. And
I think that the determination of the Israeli capital should be something that should be settled in
for,
a Israeli.
let me just say also, this is Charlie Kirk's video. Like, he posted this on his Twitter account. He titled it "The Best Israeli Palestinian Explanation on the Internet," of a 2 or 3 minute video clip that really doesn't even address like even kind of the entirety of the topic. So it's just insane that he would even post that. And like, I feel really bad for this guy asking the question, because he's like very clearly like super nervous, and he's it'll come off in the video that he's not the most knowledgeable. I think he's really nervous, and he doesn't fully understand all of it. And then Charlie Kirk just, let's just jump right into it.
Palestinian bilateral negotiations for the creation of a Palestinian state, which is something that the Palestinian people should be able to have. They should be able to have freedom. They should.
So they do have freedom. What freedoms do the Palestinian people not have right now?
Well, I mean, currently.
So this is where he jumps right in. Anyone that knows anything about what's going on here would know that that is a ridiculous question that Charlie Kirk just asked. But he's going to be really I don't even know how to describe it, but he's going to be want to get super specific with this guy. And like I said, you can tell he's really nervous, and I think that Charlie Kirk senses that. And so he's going to ask this guy, and then we'll kind of get into how I feel like I wish this guy had responded to what Charlie Kirk was saying.
Name one freedom. Have you been to the West Bank?
Something they lack: freedom of movement.
Sure they do. An Arab in the Palestinian Authority can travel to Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, in and out with any sort of restriction.
All right, so this is just a blatant lie. This is a blatant lie. Also, first of all, he said about Palestinians, and so let's just assume that he's not talking about Gaza. We'll break into Gaza first, but let's just say that he's talking about the West Bank. And so the West Bank is basically, this is like a remnant of the Oslo Accords. It's separated into three different like territories. There's Area A, Area B, Area C. Now, I don't know the full extent of which territories are specifically occupied by who. I believe it's areas A and B are solely occupied by Palestinians, and then Area C has both Israeli settlements as well as Palestinians. I could be wrong on that. The point is, though, within the West Bank, the Palestinians are deeply restricted in their movement, and like I guess you could also say that Israelis are somewhat restricted in their movement there. But the Israelis have a voting say over their government, and their government is the one that controls the military. I mean, this is a military occupation that we're talking about in the West Bank, a military occupation that has been condemned by the international community, aside from the U.S., has been deemed illegal. And it's just, I mean, these are where when it's talking about the West Bank that you often hear the calls of apartheid taking place. Now that, like I said, some people would say that about Gaza, but I think what's going on in Gaza is much more horrific than simply apartheid. But within the West Bank, I mean, you've had literally members of the ANC, such as Ronnie Kasril, call Desmond Tutu, call what is taking place in the West Bank apartheid, and this is because there's severe restriction of movement. And so we'll keep going there, but just, I mean, Charlie Kirk is just lying.
I've been to Judea and Samaria. I've been to Hebron. I've been to the Golan Heights. As a Christian, thankfully, I'm allowed in there. All my Jewish tour guides and my IDF friends as Jews are not allowed in the West Bank. Why? So what freedom don't they?
So like I said, that this is obviously there are areas, I believe, in the West Bank where Jewish people are not able to go to, but there are areas that Palestinians are not able to go. Like, that's the thing. And when you when you have a government that represents you and that is controlling the military occupation, I would say that you have more rights in that situation than the person that has absolutely no say in what is happening to them.
Well,
No, I don't know. Can you name one freedom that the Palestinian people do not have?
And see, and now he's talking about Palestinian people. Like, he's not even talking about the West Bank anymore. He's talking about the Palestinian people. And so let's get into Gaza. What is taking place in Gaza is there is a full debilitate, just aside from the airstrikes that have just completely leveled entire buildings in Gaza, and the what we saw in 2014, what we've seen repeatedly in Gaza, the destruction that has taken place. there is a debilitating blockade that has been put on Gaza by Israel and Egypt since 2007, I believe, and it they control who goes in and out. They control what goes in and out, like money, substances, everything. They Israel has almost total control of what goes in and out of Gaza. And to say that the Palestinian people don't have their freedom restricted, like people have referred to Gaza as the largest open air prison in the world. Like that is how restricted it is. And then we can get into it. And first, let me also be clear if it's not obvious. I 100% condemn the actions of Hamas, the targeting of civilians. That goes without saying. But the fact of the matter is, Israel has one of the most advanced defense systems in the entire world with the Iron Dome. The vast majority of rockets that are launched by Hamas are rendered. They don't mean anything. The ones that get through, like I said, I 100% condemn, not just the ones that don't get through, all of them. Hamas is a terrible, terrible organization. But that does not mean that the Palestinian people within Gaza are not deeply, deeply restricted, and that the asymmetry of power that exists between Israel and the people within Gaza is unreal. Israel has the entire complete backing of the United States. Well, both militarily, I mean, we're funding them $3.1 billion a year. So to pretend that there's like no freedoms that the Palestinian people they cannot leave Gaza without Israel's permission. Like you can't get out. It's insane what he's saying.
I look,
or is that just a talking point with no evidence?
Look, sophistry aside for both of us, just there's an imbalance here between between Israel and.
See, this is what I meant. Like the guy, like he's clearly like heard some talking points before, but he's obviously like super nervous. And Charlie Kirk is making it much more difficult for him. And it's just really unfortunate because you can tell that he's heard some stuff before, but
Palestine, that the current Israeli government.
What imbalance? Can you build it out for me? Because you haven't been able to name a freedom they don't have. Did you know that the Israeli government gave up the Gaza Strip in pursuit of peace in 2006? And it was immediately taken over. 10,000 Jewish settlers left the Gaza Strip in pursuit of peace in 2006, and it was immediately taken over by the terrorist group Hamas, which is one of the richest.
So that needs to be addressed. In 2006, in Gaza, there was an election that was deemed fair and free. This election was deemed a legitimate election. Now, George Bush was hoping that the Fatah party would win this election, but they did not win. Hamas won the election. And the people of Gaza, they apparently committed the ultimate crime that day by voting the wrong way. They did not vote the way that the U.S. wanted them to vote. That's not even to say that the U.S. likes the Fatah party, but they prefer them over Hamas. And Israel and the United States have been making the people of Gaza pay ever since. We have the blockade that we're talking about. We have the countless airstrikes that have taken place. I mean, what took place in 2014. I think over 1,000 civilians were killed in the 2004. What took place in Gaza in 2014. I mean, it's just over and over. I mean, hundreds of children that have been killed in these airstrikes, and the idea that this little tiny group where half of the population lives in poverty, I think it's like 40% of the population is unemployed, they're deeply, deeply impoverished. They've been just the legs cut out from under them with this blockade, to pretend that they have any sort of parity with the strongest military in the region, with the complete and total backing of the strongest military in the world, the most powerful country in the world with the United States. It's just insane. But Charlie Kirk is purposefully just being like obtuse about this and pretending not to know what the guy is talking about.
Parts of Israel. Israel gave it up voluntarily because they thought it would give them peace, and the PA didn't give it to them. So what freedoms does the PA?
And this is also, I also think that this points out that Charlie Kirk doesn't really, other than just lying, he also doesn't seem to know what he's talking about, because Hamas controls Gaza, the PA controls the West Bank, and the PA is currently the Fatah party is in power in the West Bank. They're in charge of the Palestinian Authority right now, and then it's Mahmoud Abbas that is currently in charge of the West Bank. Which also, by the way, if we're going to talk about freedoms, the people of the West Bank, not only can they not vote in Israeli elections, they can't even vote in who represents them, because Mahmoud Abbas won't hold elections. He won his election, I believe, in 2006, and has maintained power ever since. It's his 14th year in his supposed 4-year term. So this is like the idea that there's no disparity in rights here is just so unbelievably not true. And if I remember right, Charlie Kirk just goes from here into like some like stuff about like the different religious stuff, like the things that I'm not super aware of, just different religious sites within the region. But the point is, though, that Charlie Kirk put out this video titled it "The Best Israeli-Palestinian Explanation on the Internet," and just lies the entire time. Puts this guy through like a very difficult situation. And it's just it's insane. Like I said, I will be making a video where I break down, what we've seen recently, between Israel and Gaza, and in the West Bank, obviously, what's going on with like Sheikh Jarrah, with the evictions there, and then also the assemblies that were broken up in the Al Aqsa Mosque. And so we'll talking all about that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you disagree with anything I said, if I got anything wrong, please leave a comment down below. But if you did enjoy the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.